Welcome to the NBW Ministries podcast, advancing the clear, accurate, and urgent gospel message. Your host, Dr. J.B. Hickson, is an author and pastor who provides commentary and insights on current events through the lens of Scripture. Dr. Hickson interacts with various experts on cultural, theological, and political issues while proclaiming God's Word to a world in desperate need of the truth. If you enjoy today's podcast, be sure to forward it to others. And now, here's your host, J.B. Hickson.
Well, good morning, folks. Thanks so much for joining us for the program today. My name is J.B. with NBW Ministries. I'm sitting here in my studio beneath the sky, nestled neatly beneath the tall timbers of colorful Colorado. Thanks for starting your day with us. It's Thursday, October 30th, 2025. October is almost behind us. Of course, tomorrow is Satan's favorite day of the year. But today, October 30th, it's time for another edition of My Thoughts Thursday. And boy, we've got a heavy one for you today. And this is where I get to just sort of share what's on my heart, look straight into the camera, have a conversation with our awesome NBW audience and whoever else may stumble upon this show today. But today, it's a hot button topic for sure. I'm going to be addressing the Charlie Kirk assassination, and more specifically, all of the information that you're not hearing in the mainstream news about what has happened since and what TPUSA is really all about. Before we get to that, a couple of quick reminders. Don't forget, tonight we've got our premier Zoom Q&A with Joe Hawkins, our good friend, and it's going to be a hoot. I mean, Joe's just such a funny guy anyway, knowledgeable, brilliant, I would say. We carry his latest book in our online store, but if you're a Premier member, don't miss it. It's always fun to join live. Of course, Premier subscribers can always go back and watch the recording later, as you can with all of our live Zoom Q&As. But join us live if you can tonight. That's 5:30 Mountain Time. It's a 90-minute live Q&A with Joe Hawkins by Zoom. You should already have the Zoom link. It's posted on your Premier page. It's never too late to sign up, by the way. If you're not a Premier subscriber and you'd like to join us tonight, hey, go to notbyworks.org, click on the store, or go through the app and click on the store button, and go ahead and subscribe. Never a better time to join us. It's a small monthly fee. It comes with a lot of great content, and especially these monthly Zoom Q&As and all the archives of previous guests. But don't miss it tonight, 5:30 Mountain Time with Joe Hawkins. And then coming up, of course, tomorrow we've got our Crossfire Friday. That's always a lot of fun. And then we've got this weekend. We've got our live stream from Plum Creek Chapel. I live stream a Bible study at 8:30 Mountain and our worship service at 10 o'clock. And love to have you join us either in person or by a live stream. All right, our verse for the day today. We're going to do an oldie but a goodie because I want to keep it really simple. I just, this is a heavy topic. I'm going to introduce it here in a moment, but let me just start by giving you this verse, James chapter 4, verse 4. It's an oldie but a goodie for two reasons. Number one, it's one of the earliest books of the New Testament, if not the earliest. James, the Lord's brother, writing in around the mid-40s A.D. when the church was still in its infancy. But it's also an oldie but a goodie because it's well known. In fact, you hear it quoted quite often. But James begins with this word of exhortation and rebuke to the early Christians in his day. Adulterers and adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Whoever therefore wants to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. And, as I think about what we're going to be talking about today, I see more than ever before the church kind of joined at the hip with the world. And it needs to stop. And sadly, I don't think it will prophetically anyway, but it certainly can in certain smaller regions when Christians begin to heed the warning of the Word, follow the Spirit, and stand firm for what's right and what's wrong, rather than jumping on board the right-left political paradigm. So here we go. And let me warn you up front, by the way, this is going to be a little bit, probably anyway, a little bit of a longer my thoughts Thursday because I'm not going to rush through this. I really, really want you to hear my heart on this issue, and I want to take great pains to make the case. Now, of course, I hope you'll do your own research and you'll come to discover what I have about TP USA. But just giving you a fair warning there, it's likely going to be a little bit longer than your typical podcast. All right, so long title, but I chose this intentionally. Why Christians Should Be Sickened by Charlie Kirk's Assassination, but equally sickened by his teachings. Now, before you start throwing things at the screen, give me the chance to make the case. I mean, I love to research. I come from an academic background. You don't just make, crazy claims without being able to document them. And I've got a ton of documentation in today's podcast. But there are some serious problems with what Charlie Kirk taught and what TPUSA teaches and stands for. And we're going to get to that. But I want to start with the obvious one, and that is this. Everybody, but especially Christians who have the Spirit indwelling them, should be absolutely sickened by what happened on that terrible day, September 10th, 2025, at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. I mean, absolutely sickened. And we should pray for Charlie Kirk's wife and family and friends, those who knew him well. Now, look, I realize there's a lot of noise out there related to this terrible event. And my purpose today is not to get into the many anomalies and strange details that have emerged. I'm not going to address any of the obvious questions that seem to have come out of the events of that day. We may never know exactly what happened. But for the purposes of today's podcast, I'm going to just simply assume the veracity of the big picture, broad official narrative. Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And that's horrific. No one should ever be shot down in cold blood. And the fact that so many radical leftists out there literally cheered his death is demonic to the core. It's shameful. Anytime an innocent human life is taken, anytime there's cold-blooded murder of anyone, we should come together as a society, and especially as the body of Christ, and unwaveringly denounce it. And yet, we're so blinded by the fake left-right paradigm in this country. I wonder how many Christians would have spoken out with the same degree of emotion and passion that many have about and in support of Charlie Kirk and his family. I wonder how many would have had the same degree of emotion and passion if a leading radical Democrat had been murdered. I mean, would you be sickened by the murder of, say, Obama? Or Biden? Or Pelosi? Or Hillary? I hope so. I would be, because that is the Christian biblical response. Nobody deserves, whatever their views, to be shot down in cold blood. I mean, it's horrific. We've all sort of trauma bonded over seeing that replay again and again. I have my suspicions as to why the Mockingbird media is playing those videos and YouTube and all that again and again, but that's, again, beside the point. We're just going to take the official narrative at its word for the purposes of today's podcast. But besides just, the normal spirit-led response to such an injustice, we should also be sickened by Kirk's murder because these types of targeted murders are increasing. And if the Lord tarries, we may one day all be in harm's way just because we're Christians, right? So make no mistake, Charlie Kirk's death was a despicable, dreadful, horrendous day for this country. And it is the right thing for Christians to speak out in solidarity with his family and friends and anyone else who loved him against this appalling crime. I hope you hear my heart on that. What concerns me, though, is the manner in which his death is being used in classic Hegelian dialectic form to advance a very dangerous pseudo-Christian political agenda. And the reason this is the case, by the way, is because most Christians today have very little discernment. I mean, they are listening to the cherry-picked quotes and jumping on the bandwagon without taking the time to really look into what TPUSA stands for. It's classic. We see this again and again and again. Some major event happens, and some group or organization or concept is brought to the collective consciousness of people who, by the way, many never even heard of TPUSA or Charlie Kirk. I've traveled a lot since this happened and talked to a lot of people. We happen to be on 2 trips since September 10th. One of them across several states up in the Northeast, and a lot of people, they have no idea who this was until now. And so again, Christians in this great last days of apostasy really lack discernment as a whole. Not everyone, and not everyone to the worst possible degree, but there's definitely a lack of discernment. That's why John tells us in 1 John 4:1 that we should test the spirits. And so many have jumped on this bandwagon just because they are being manipulated based on cherry-picked quotes. And so I want to give you, as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story. For the remainder of my time today, I'd like to do a deep dive into what Charlie Kirk and TPUSA taught, what they stood for, and what really troubles me about their ideology. In fact, in some cases, it's sickening, as you shall see. But please understand, this is in no way a personal attack. I have friends and colleagues who have embraced the TPUSA ideological and political framework. I love them. I respect them. I just strongly disagree with them. And the loving thing to do is to point out error when you see it. And I think the evidence is overwhelming here that TPUSA and its founder, the late Charlie Kirk, it's not what everyone thinks it is. It's not what it's cracked up to be. And it's perfectly appropriate for me to simultaneously be horrified and sickened by what happened to that innocent man that day, and yet at the same time point out why we should be very, very careful about throwing our money or our support behind this organization. It's okay to call people out that are teaching false doctrine. Romans 16:17 says, I urge you, brethren, to note those who cause divisions and offenses contrary to the doctrine which you have learned, and to avoid them. And I want to point out, as we get started here, that this isn't just a reaction on my part to what's happened. I actually addressed TPUSA and Charlie Kirk in my last book that came out, 7-8 months before his tragic assassination. The Great Last Days Apostasy, Chapter 9, deals with Christian nationalism in great detail, and talks about Charlie Kirk. And then when you get to pages 177 to 180 of that chapter, I deal almost exclusively with TPUSA and Charlie Kirk in those 4 pages. So just want to put that out there. And if you'd like sort of documentation, because of course all of my books have the sources cited about a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today, because a good portion of it is coming directly from the book, then I encourage you to pick up the book and check it out for yourself. But let's dive in. There are 3 reasons. There are probably a lot more, but 3 primary reasons that I want to focus on today that the views of Charlie Kirk and the organization he founded, TPUSA, and its subsidiaries, Turning Point Action and Turning Point Faith, at least 3 reasons that I'm going to focus on today that what they believe on these issues should really sicken Bible-believing Christians. And let's start with the one I've already mentioned, and that is TPUSA has been and is a leading voice advancing Christian nationalism. Now, as we're going to see in a moment, it wasn't always that way. In fact, TPUSA originally wasn't really even claiming to have a connection to a Christian movement. It was a conservative Republican movement trying to get college students to be active in politics. But they shifted, very clearly. I'm going to talk about the time frame of that, and we're going to contrast some of Charlie's early statements with after the shift. And it coincides with the rise of Christian nationalism in recent years, and I believe there's a direct connection there, as we shall see. So the first problem that should really be catching the attention of Bible-believing conservative Christians is that TPUSA is unquestionably a leading voice advancing Christian nationalism, the New Apostolic Reformation, the Seven Mountain Mandate, these types of things which we're going to talk about. So before his tragic death, Kirk had become one of the nation's most prominent voices, calling on Christians to view conservative political activism as a central part of the Christian faith. In a 2020 interview with podcaster Lucas Miles, Charlie said, "I've been a Christian basically my whole life," quote unquote. He went on to say that he first prayed to become a Christian when he was in the 5th grade, explaining, quote, that he said the words, but it was several years before he understood what salvation truly meant. Well, if this is true, and we have no reason not to take Charlie Kirk at his word, I believe he's with the Lord today. I believe he was a believer. But it's really strange to me that his meteoric rise to prominence in the church only began recently. Why was his early career spent promoting ideals like the separation of church and state that fly in the face of conservative Christian ideology and fly in the face of what TPUSA is now claiming to be? Why is that? He has a long track record as a conservative voice in America, especially with college students, but his platform within the church curiously originated about the same time that Christian nationalism was really, that resurgence of it anyway. Christian nationalism is not new, but the resurgence of it kind of was just getting started. So TPUSA has become a leading voice in the Christian nationalism movement. More than any other organization today, TPUSA illustrates the conflation of church and politics. Kirk spoke in pulpits and on Christian campuses across the country and secular campuses, often accompanied by well-known elected officials. Marjorie Taylor Greene, a U.S. representative from Georgia, said at a TPUSA event in 2022, quote, "We need to be the party of nationalism. I am a Christian, and I say it proudly. We should be Christian nationalists," to the cheers of the TPUSA crowd. And that's just one example. And I would say, with all due respect to Representative Greene, look, I love horses and I love sandwiches, but that doesn't mean I love horse sandwiches. Well, I love Christ and I love my country, but I am by no means a Christian nationalist, because the Bible teaches against that notion, as we shall see. Another Congresswoman, Lauren Boebert, from my home state of Colorado, she said, quote, "The church is supposed to direct the government." Really? Well, that's not what my Bible tells me. My Bible tells me there's 3 institutions divinely ordained by God: family, church, and government. Family, government, then church. And it's not the church's role to rule the world. It's Christ's role. Ultimately, Christ will come back, and only then should we be entering and considering a theocracy. So I just strongly disagree with the sentiments of those who have spoken and represented TPUSA across the country. Kirk's journey is an interesting one. We don't have time to go into all the details, but it illustrates just how much the Christian nationalist movement has merged with, or maybe better said, been co-opted by, the Republican Party. So in 2018, Charlie Kirk strongly criticized the evangelical movement. Known then for primarily his work mobilizing college-age Republicans, Kirk described Jesus as tolerant and welcoming and denounced Christians', quote, sanctimonious approach, his view, his words, to homosexuality and other issues. He argued politics should be advanced through a, quote, secular worldview, and he slammed attempts by the evangelical right that started back in the 70s with guys like Jerry Falwell and Tim LaHaye to impose their version of morality through government policy. That was 2018 Charlie Kirk. Kirk told the conservative commentator Dave Rubin, we'll talk more about him in a moment, he's a homosexual, a very outspoken, leading gay man, but he told him in 2018, quote, "We do have a separation of church and state, and we should support that." That's 2018 Charlie Kirk. Now, Kirk later reversed his position, a stunning transformation with little or no explanation, because sometimes people say, well, people change, JB, right? When you're so passionately in one camp and then you switch to the other without any sort of mea culpa or explanation, it's always a red flag to me. But I'm not even suggesting that Charlie Kirk personally might not have changed his views sincerely and genuinely on these things. That's not my point. So stay with me and you'll see what my point is. My point is, what does TPUSA represent today? So he changed his position to embody, embrace, and promote Christian nationalism and the Seven Mountain Mandate. He said on his own podcast in 2022, quote, "There is no separation of church and state. It's a fabrication. It's a fiction. It's not in the Constitution. It's made up by secular humanists." Quite different from what he told David Rubin back in 2018. Now, to understand the serious problems with the political organization TPUSA, you first got to understand Christian nationalism and how TPUSA is promoting that. So Christian nationalism has as part of its lineage the errors of dominion theology. That's a teaching that I used to talk about in the academic world, in the classroom, that was popularized by R.J. Rushdoony in the 1960s and 70s. Dominionists, as they are called, seek to institute a nation governed by Christians and impose the Old Testament law on society. One scholar, in an article entitled "What is Dominion Theology?" says, quote, "Dominion theology is the teaching that Christians are to take dominion over all areas of the secular realm, media, government, schools, arts, etc. It is also known as Christian Reconstructionism and is often associated with theonomy or dominion theology. Theonomic ethics is what he's talking about here. The rule of God in society." Back to his quote, this scholar. "There are varieties of dominion theology. Some assert that all governments should be replaced with the Old Testament law. Others advocate a blending of secular and sacred systems. But whatever the case, dominion theology urges Christians to take their, quote, rightful place in all areas of society all over the world. And once this is accomplished," listen carefully, this is the heart of Christian nationalism, which has its roots in dominion theology. Once this is accomplished, once Christians take their rightful place as rulers all over the world, and the world is converted to Christianity, then Jesus will return. Now, our audience, if you follow NBW Ministries and follow the prophetic teaching that our group teaches and the circles that we run in of dispensational pre-tribulationism, you know that is not at all what the Bible teaches. The Bible doesn't teach that the church's job is to take over the world, and when we get it all nice and neat and tidied up, then Christ will come back at the end of the millennium. Again, post-millennialism, which is just another name for Christian Reconstructionism or theonomic ethics or dominion theology. That's not what the Bible teaches at all. So the Christian nationalist movement has captured the attention, understandably so, of politicians, pundits, and the public alike. Mike Johnson, the current Speaker of the House of Representatives, hangs a flag, or at least he did at one point when I researched this for the book, associated with the New Apostolic Reformation. So he hangs this flag outside his office, right? One scholar wrote, "Suddenly, it seems," this is actually a journalist in March of 2024, quote, "Suddenly it seems the term Christian nationalism is everywhere. News reports about a rising conservative think tank express concerns about its ties to the movement. A high-profile documentary asks whether a new wave of believers will wash away democracy in America, and Donald Trump is increasingly embracing the narrative that he has been chosen by God and that only he can save America from Satan," end quote. References to God, Christianity, and morality resonate with the American evangelical church, right? Of course they should. That's what the Bible teaches: God, Christianity, morality. Yet, typical of Satan's modus operandi, Christian nationalism mixes truth with error. This is what I talk about in my book. While it is true that God's fingerprints are all over the founding and history of this country, it does not follow that Christians should revolt and create a theocracy. The only theocracy Christians should be heralding is the one Christ will bring in at his triumphant return. Now, let me dive a little deeper here. So, because some people will say, well, we're already under a theocracy because God's in charge. So that's not a theocracy. Theocracy is a political, man-made governmental term. Obviously, we understand that our obligation is to God first. and to our family second, and then to the government third, the order of creation. But that's not what theocracy means. Theocracy is a form of government, right? And that's not God's divine design for today. And that's why Satan is trying to usher in a one-world theocracy that will ultimately be led by the Antichrist, whom he will indwell. And that one-world system is going to be short-lived and crushed when the real everlasting theocracy comes back, and that's Christ himself. Until that day, God's divine design is nationalism, and it has been ever since Genesis 9, when God instituted human government. But Christian nationalism, back to my thoughts from my book here, Christian nationalism goes well beyond simply exerting a Christian influence on American culture, something all American Christians should strive to do. It's what we're here for, to make a difference, to be salt and light. But Christian nationalism represents an overt and sometimes covert agenda of which most Christians are completely unaware. Christian nationalism essentially takes the questionable perspective of American exceptionalism, which I critiqued in my book, Spirit of the Antichrist, Volume 1, and it adds evangelicalism's stamp of approval. And yet it is more than a mere ideology, it's a movement. And this movement has been co-opted by the Luciferian elite as they strive to usher in the New World Order. Many of its advocates within government and the church are unwitting pawns in the game. As I've said often, the global elite need the church on their side if they're going to bring down America. The allure of Christian nationalism has captured most conservative Christians today, and it's hard to resist, especially after 4 years of far-left radical politics under President Biden. The pendulum is swinging forcefully to the right, and Christians are pushing it. We need a hero. And Donald Trump has stepped into that role, whether he was conscripted by nefarious kingmakers or joined the movement willingly. We may never know. That's an open question in my mind. But Christians today are speaking of a new golden age for America. The term is pervasive on social media, the internet, and from America's pulpit. By the way, let me interject here, because I know many of our audience listens to this podcast, the audio form, but we've got some great graphics and some great video clips that I think are going to really be important for you to watch. So even if you usually listen by audio, you'll get the gist of it in audio format, but I encourage you to watch the video, which is available for free at the NBW Ministries app or notbyworks.org website or YouTube or Rumble or any of those other outlets on our channel. But the golden age for America begins. On January 26th of this year, 2025, a tweet that allegedly came from Eric Trump circulated wildly, went viral on social media, and it said, quote, again, from Eric Trump, quote, "Any and all who dare to defy the American golden age, heed this warning. You will, all caps, lose. Toe the line, or we will, all caps, run you down. The gloves are off, and we're not playing around this time. For now, it's tariffs, but trust me, we can and will do so much worse." Now, the tweet is of questionable provenance, but it nevertheless reflects the attitude of the Christian nationalist movement. I mean, who would not want to be a part of a golden age that makes America great again, right? But be very careful, because as Shakespeare said, not all that glitters is gold. One critic of Christian nationalism correctly writes, listen carefully, quote, "The message that ethnicities shouldn't mix, that heretics can be killed, that violent revolution is already justified, and that what our nation needs is a charismatic Caesar-like leader to raise our consciousness and galvanize the will of the people, may bear resemblance to certain blood and soil nationalisms of the 19th and 20th centuries, but it is not a nationalism that honors and represents the name of Christ." I couldn't agree more. The Christian nationalism that has emerged in these last days seeks to thrust Christianity on the government by force. And yet, it's interesting that Jesus told Pilate, political leader of his day, quote, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight, so that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now my kingdom is not from here." See? The world right now is the devil's playground. John tells us the whole world is under the sway of the wicked one. It won't always be that way. Someday Christ is going to come back. But until then, it's not our job to take over the government and force Christianity on the world. This false teaching is essentially a repackaged form of postmillennialism, as I've said. The view that once Christians get the world cleaned up, Christ will come back at the end of the age, at the end of the millennium, to climax the kingdom age. Well, this is not at all what the Bible teaches. So the seven mountain mandate, and this is where I encourage you to check out the graphic here. I'm not going to go through it point by point, but it's well put together. Borrowed it from someone. But the seven mountain mandate represents essentially the ideological marching orders for Christian nationalism and its most well-known movement within evangelical Christianity, the New Apostolic Reformation, or NAR, N-A-R. We've talked a lot about that on our program. It holds that there are seven aspects of society that believers should seek to dominate. And these are arts and entertainment, number 2, business and finance, number 3, religion and Christianity, number 4, media, or religion and the church, I guess I should say. Number 4, media. Number 5, education. Number 6, family. And number 7, government and the legal system, meaning the courts. And it has gained huge momentum through figures like Paula White, President Trump's pastor, and yes, Charlie Kirk at TP USA. I'll give you a quote here in a second, but before I get to that, I want you to understand they base this on a passage of Scripture, Isaiah 2 and 3. I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to tell you how this is grossly misinterpreted. But it doesn't matter to them. They just sort of give this proof texting stamp of approval, and a lot of Christians aren't discerning enough to realize it is heresy. But Isaiah, speaking of the coming kingdom, says, "Now it shall come to pass in the latter days," this is Isaiah chapter 2, verses 2 and 3, "It shall come to pass in the latter days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established on the top of the mountains." Now, what mountain is that? Well, let's see what he says. "It shall be exalted above the hills. All nations shall flow to it. Many people shall come and say, 'Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. He will teach us his ways, and we shall walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem." What's the mountain here? Jerusalem, Zion, the temple, the kingdom someday when Christ comes back to establish the long-awaited Messianic kingdom. So to extrapolate from that the church today in the present age is supposed to dominate these mountains and take them over amounts to quintessential proof texting, taking this passage wildly out of context. Isaiah meant Israel, not the church. And Israel will be most highly exalted on the earth during Messiah's eschatological reign in the end times. The church is never mentioned in the Old Testament. One scholar in an article entitled "The Conservative Christian Seven Mountain Mandate" explains, quote, "The concept of Christian dominionism is woven into the fabric of the seven mountain mandate. This says that God's word, as expressed through the Bible, gives Christians the authority to take over the world." And by the way, let me interject. This is my comment now. It's worse than that. I mean, a lot of these advocates of the Seven Mountain Mandate and New Apostolic Reformation, they think they're getting revelation directly from God, that God has supernaturally pulled them aside and said, "You're in charge, you've got to take over the world." And that's pretty scary. Some very powerful Christians, including back to the quote, some very powerful Christian Americans, including Donald Trump, find this theology attractive, end quote. So the Seven Mountain Mandate claims there are 7 aspects of society that Christians must dominate before Christ will return. Now, I'm going to make the connection here, and this is just the beginning of it, between this movement and TPUSA. Let's start with Charlie Kirk. In a speech before CPAC on February 27, 2020, Charlie Kirk said, again, this was 2020, early on in his shift, when he was sort of co-opted by this whole movement, said, quote, "Finally, we have a president that understands the 7 mountains of cultural influence." And he never repudiated that. We can readily see the similarities between dominion theology and Christian nationalism. Indeed, the nuances of dominion and reconstruction more aptly describe the movement than nationalism. It goes well beyond mere patriotic support of the government, and instead it advocates for a complete dismantling and rebuilding of it. And that brings us to the direct connection between the Seven Mountain Mandate and something called Project 2025. Project 2025 and its architect, Russell Vogt, embody the Reconstructionist ideology embedded within Christian nationalism. It's a powerful political initiative organized by the Heritage Foundation, a highly influential conservative think tank founded in the early 70s. The project aims to promote conservative and right-wing policies to reshape the federal government of the United States and consolidate executive power under the leadership of a single individual. Now, although President Trump has at times embraced Project 2025 and at other times distanced himself from it, the vast majority of the executive actions Trump has issued so far mirror or partially mirror the proposals from this 900-page document. I'm going to play some clips here in a moment that prove that. In the months leading up to the 2024 presidential election, Project 2025 received mostly fringe coverage in the media. It is linked to, quote, the Statement on Christian Nationalism Manifesto, which said, quote, which seeks, quote, to implement a scripture-based system of government where Christ-ordained civil magistrates exercise authority over all American public. Well, look, notwithstanding the enthusiastic support of many conservative Christians for Project 2025, especially because part of its goal is to take down the deep state, look, this is a dangerous mechanism that's being used to undermine constitutional freedoms on which this country is founded. And whenever someone offers to rescue you from the frying pan, beware the fire. And that's what's going on here. They're saying what we want to hear. Oh, we got to get the deep state. We got to cut waste. We got to do this. We got to beat China to the AI race. But that's not what it's about. It's never about what it's about. So let me explain how TPUSA, Christian nationalism, Project 2025 all relate to what's happening today and why what is happening after the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk is so sickening to me, the way Christians are blindly jumping on the bandwagon. The ideological fingerprints of a guy named Curtis Yarvin appear conspicuously all over Project 2025 and this proposal to reshape America. Yarvin is an influential anti-democratic founder, not anti-democrat, but anti-democratic founder of a political movement known as neo-reactionism or the Dark Enlightenment. It's very popular in right-wing conservative circles and very popular in tech circles. And he proposes, get this, installing an American monarch who would abolish the U.S. Constitution. He refers to those who foolishly maintain a grip on the foundational document of our country as, quote, rightists, and he uses that disparagingly. I've played clips of him, recent clips within the last few months at some of my conferences. I've got some others I'm going to play here, but let me just summarize his whole ideology. Yarvin and his ilk want to topple, replace, reboot, reset, all their words, the U.S. government. They say we need a visionary leader, a startup guy, their words, like a Napoleon or a Lenin who can seize absolute power, dismantle the Constitution, and build something new in its place. And he has some pretty prominent Republican followers. And if that doesn't send chills down your spine, then frankly, you're asleep at the wheel. Now, what is the link between Charlie Kirk, Curtis Yarvin, and Project 2025? Well, Vice President J.D. Vance and technocrat Peter Thiel, both of whom obviously yield powerful influence in Washington, D.C. Peter Thiel with the burgeoning technocracy and his funding of a lot of the AI projects that Trump has rolled out. But they're two of Yarvin's most famous disciples. Some have referred to Yarvin and Vance as the neo-reactionary dream team. That's what they call them inside the Beltway and inside circles. But Charlie Kirk was also extremely close to J.D. Vance and Curtis Yarvin. J.D. Vance guest hosted the Charlie Kirk Show right after Kirk's assassination. And it was very emotional, by the way, and I believe it's genuine. I don't think J.D. was necessarily faking it. I think he was very close to Charlie Kirk, and that's why he cried and became so emotional when he guest hosted Charlie's show. And Kirk has also interviewed Yarvin, this guy that wants to destroy the Constitution and install a monarch. It's done. Our country is done. We don't need a constitution anymore. It's time. It's been 250 years. It's time for a fresh start, and a monarchy is the way to go if we're going to really fix this country. That's Curtis Yarvin. Again and again, I could show you quotes. I have played clips in the past of him doing mainstream interviews on CNN and Fox News. But here's one example of what Kirk thought about Curtis Yarvin. Remember, he interviewed him multiple times. So this is from January of 2024. Watch this.
All right, this is going to be fun, everybody. This is going to be a great hour. I've been following this guy for a while. He's extremely smart, and the media covers him a lot too. And he's something. It's Curtis Yarvin, also known by the pen name. You're gonna have to pronounce the first word for me.
Mencius Moldbug.
Very, very prolific. That's one way to say it. And he has thought-provoking ideas that I just love.
Thought-provoking ideas that I just love. I mean, I don't know how anybody with any discernment at all could give this guy a platform unless it's not about what it's about. And the case that I'm making here, and it's going to be clear by the time we get to the end of today's show, is that Charlie Kirk was not just some well-intentioned, innocent guy who jumped on the wrong bandwagon. This was intentional. TPUSA, this is my first problem with them. We're still in number one. I've got two more to go, and the second one is particularly sickening, so stay with me. But TPUSA furthered and advanced the cause of national Reconstructionism, Christian nationalism, those types of things. So again, he's been on there multiple times. Here's another one from April of 2024. Is America no longer exceptional with Curtis Yarvin? And you just have to wonder why TPUSA is giving Curtis Yarvin this platform. Here's another one for members only. It's unclear to me because I'm not a member whether this was just a replay of one of his other ones or a third one altogether. But yes, Charlie Kirk, Curtis Yarvin, J.D. Vance joined at the hip. Now, my good friend Patrick Wood has said this: to truly understand what's going on, one must study the connection between Curtis Yarvin and the Trump-Vance billionaire backer Peter Thiel. They envision a regional techno-monarchy that would revive the 1930s idea of, quote, a North American technate, complete with a parliamentary system and a king. So who needs a democratic republic when you can have a king, right? The Luciferian elite, whom I've talked and written about for almost 20 years now, need America to collapse and join the one world government if they're going to establish the New World Order and pave the way for the Antichrist. And the collapse of America means the collapse of our Constitution, folks. That's the key. And if you think I'm overstating this rapidly emerging monarchy, just take 5 minutes and browse any social media channel. You'll see posts like this with our current president on the throne and tweets, "Long live our Imperator, Donald J. Trump." Imperator is emperor of ancient Rome. Savior of the Republic, right? Or this one. Or mainstream magazine covers like The Economist, the would-be king, Trump with a crown on his head, or Time magazine. But this is not just the stuff of fringe leftists by any stretch, nor is it the stuff of the Mockingbird mainstream-controlled media. The White House itself has posted many pictures of Trump as king, including these right here, posted again by the White House. Now listen carefully. I'm not suggesting that Trump is complicit in any of this. I have my suspicions, but I'm certainly not suggesting that Trump is the Antichrist. I have no idea whether Trump is the horse, the cart, or he's just taking a ride. But that's irrelevant. Don't lose sight of the facts here because of your emotional, visceral response to my criticism of Christian nationalism, Project 2025, and the neo-reactionary Dream Team and Curtis Yarvin's anti-constitutional influence on this country. There is a burgeoning technocracy that most people are oblivious to. And what's the goal of this burgeoning technocracy? A monarch, a monarchy. Here's another clip here. Listen to what Steve Bannon, you know him from the War Room, Steve Bannon, one time and perhaps still Trump ally, but listen to what he had to say.
Well, he's going to get a third term. So Trump 28, Trump is going to be president in 28, and people just ought to get accommodated with that.
So what about the 22nd Amendment?
There's many different alternatives. At the appropriate time, we'll lay out what the plan is, but there's a plan, and President Trump will be the president in 28. We had longer odds in 16 and longer odds in 24 than we got in 28. And President Trump will be the President of the United States, and the country needs him to be President of the United States. We have to finish what we started. And the way we finish it through Trump, Trump is a vehicle. I know this will drive you guys crazy, but he's a vehicle of divine providence. He's an instrument. He's very imperfect. He's not churchy, not particularly religious, but he's an instrument of divine will. And you can tell this of how he's pulled this off. We need him for at least one more term, right? And he'll get that in 28.
You're not driving me crazy. I'm really I'm trying to understand the coherence of the things you've just told me in the last few minutes. On the one hand, you've said the Constitution is fit for purpose. Secondly, you've said that President Trump needs another term, even though the 22nd Amendment makes pretty clear that he cannot have another term.
Why does it make that clear?
Because he's on his second term already.
At some point in time, we will make sure we go through, Zanny, and define all those terms.
But even if you find a way to undermine you will be undermining the spirit of that amendment, even if you find some way around it. And to those
Can the American people, if the American people, with the mechanisms we have, put Trump back in office, are the American people tearing up the Constitution? Would that be tearing up? Would the American people be going against the spirit of the Constitution, ma'am?
I think yes, actually, because I think what you will end up with is a populist justification for a quasi-dictatorship.
That's not true at all.
That's what it sounds like.
It's not. Trump is a dictatorship. Did you just see the compromises he had to make on the big, beautiful bill? You see the compromises he has to do on everything, on accommodating Zelensky, on what President Trump. President Trump is nothing but a series of negotiations to kind of keep this thing rolling forward, where he's having trade-offs all the time.
Steve, you've just spent the last 20 minutes telling me we have to smash the other side. There's no room for debate. There's no room for compromise. We must smash them. And now you're telling me this is a negotiation. I mean, that's
no.
I guess that's why it seems to me some kind of tension
First
there.
off, the only way President Trump wins in 2028 and continues to stay in office is by the will of the American people. Okay?
All right, so, there's so much here I wish I could unpack. I can't help myself. I'm going to have to at least make a couple of comments. Several times, Steve Bannon talks about how, there is a mechanism by which the American people can defy the Constitution, which clearly limits any president to 2 terms now. What is that mechanism? It's dismantling the Constitution. What he's alluding to there is, if there is no Constitution, then this is all a moot point, and we can have him serve as long as we want him to. And you have to wonder, what does Steve Bannon know that we don't? And of course, I know a lot of, and I don't mean this in a pejorative way, I love those who might be watching this who are all in with Trump and MAGA and all that. I get it. I respect you. I mean, obviously we've been conditioned to think this way, and I was conditioned to think that way for a long time, and it's very difficult to break free of those shackles. So I don't mean this as a personal attack, but I think there are a lot of people out there who would listen to that quote and they'd go, yay, yes, absolutely. Trump's the great negotiator. We need him for as long as we can have. But anyway, Steve Bannon here is unashamedly insisting that Trump is going to be president again in 2028. Precisely the way the Vance, Yarvin, Thiel, neo-reactionary dream team has been pushing, precisely the way Project 2025 reads like the script, and precisely the way political pundits like the late Charlie Kirk and organizations like TPUSA have been platforming these people and promoting this to get the Christian church on board. So Steve Bannon insists that Trump is going to be president again in 2028, which is maybe why Trump told TPUSA at an event last year. Again, we're making a connection here between TPUSA and Christian nationalism. Maybe that's why Trump said this at a TPUSA event last year.
This time, you won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed. It'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians. I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. I love you. Get out. You got to get out and vote. In 4 years, you don't have to vote again. We'll have it fixed so good you're not going to have to vote.
I mean, he never repudiated that. And by the way, that's not the only time he said that. What does he know that we don't? And by the way, does anybody else offended by his tone. He sounds like a kindergarten teacher talking to me as a kindergartner. You beautiful Christians, it's going to be okay. I'm sorry, I struggle. And those are the kind of quotes that just go right over most people's head. And this issue is becoming more and more mainstream as the Mockingbird media conditions us. I mean, just look at this headline from just this past Monday, October 27th. This is a CNN headline: "Take Trump's third term tease seriously." So I don't know what's going to happen in 2028. I hope we're not here. I hope the Lord comes back, the trumpet sounds, and this is all a distant memory as we fellowship together in eternity. But if the Lord tarries, there's something afoot here, and they're telegraphing it. Now, again, the architect of Project 2025 is a hugely influential person, Russell Vought. In May of 2024, Russell Vought was named the policy director for the RNC Platform Committee. Talk about a pretty influential person, and he was responsible for changing the platform to embrace gay marriage and to soften its stance on murdering the unborn, so that it's okay to murder unborn children, preborn children, under certain circumstances, innocent preborn children. This is all part of the plan. The Center for Renewing America, or CRA, was founded by Vought, and it's on Project 2025's advisory board. Vought drafted, listen to this, drafted executive orders, regulations, and memos that laid the groundwork for rapid action on Trump's agenda when he won a second term. The CRA, again, that's the Center for Renewing America, Vought's organization, identified Christian nationalism as one of the top priorities for the second Trump term. I cannot emphasize that enough. This is in their own words. So when Trump credits Charlie Kirk with helping get out the young vote, that was a smokescreen. Oh, I'm sure a lot of young people did get out and vote for conservative values because, as we're going to see, they wanted to condone their homosexuality and some of those other things that are now okay for Christian conservatives. But it wasn't about that. It was about, as Vought and the CRA clearly stated, Christian nationalism is a top priority for Trump's second term. Why? Why? Because they need Christians on board to accomplish their goal. Vought claimed that Trump blessed the CRA and their objectives, and that his effort to distance himself from Project 2025 was just politics, but he was really in it from the beginning. Vought, by the way, was Trump's director of the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, very powerful position during his first term, and reappointed to that position for the second term. And here's a sort of a video montage. I want to thank my good friend Toby for helping put together some of these. I kind of edited it, took some of the videos that he forwarded to me. But here's a video montage showing how Trump at first distanced himself from 2025 during the debates, and then turned around and appointed Vought to a key, very powerful government position. And you're going to see some quotes of Vought on different talk shows and in different interviews where he talks about how Trump's executive orders were all pre-written by him and Project 2025. Watch this.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do.
Say this with sincerity. It's not intended to be a trollish comment. I suspect that a lot of people who watch your show, who watch other shows on this network, have been bombarded with a lot of propaganda about Project 2025. So it's actually a great opportunity for me to say, Project 2025 has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the Trump campaign, a future Trump transition, a future Trump administration.
Out there that will do what he wants.
All right, let me pause it right there before we get to this John Vought statement. That was a complete lie. Let me just, I know there's some trolls out there and some left-wing media that are going to say Trump was involved in it. He had absolutely nothing to do with it. That is a lie, and it's a provable lie, as we now know. The executive orders, many of them, all of the cuts, the layoffs that we're seeing right now made by John Vought in the Office of Management and Budget, all part of, clearly, undeniably part of the Project 2025 script. Watch this.
there are people like me that have his trust that we'll be able to get it to him in whatever position we're at. I expect you to hear 10 more times from the rally, the president, distancing himself from the left's boogeyman at Project 2025.
And you're not worried about that?
No. My time right now is being spent chairing the transition portion of the Project 2025. We have detailed agency plans. We are writing the actual executive orders. I don't want President Trump having to lose a moment of time having fights in the Oval Office about whether something is legal or doable or moral. If we fail, this election will have been for nothing.
The golden age of America begins right now.
2 of the federal government shut down, and right now Congress remains deadlocked.
We should not bend it all on a CR, because then we've given the heroin addict a taste of heroin.
Here's Steve Bannon giving a platform to John Vogt. By the way, I want to comment on what Vogt said in that other little video clip we just played. He said, I'm not worried about, probably Trump 10 more times in the campaign is going to distance himself from 2020. I'm not worried about it. That's just politics. He just has to say that to get elected. But we're with him. I have his ear. I'm one of the few people that can influence him, John Vogt said. Now watch this.
One again. Have we not, Russ?
I don't think anyone should be afraid of a government shutdown.
You know Russell Vogt, he's a serious person, very serious person, and he's sitting there and he's getting ready to cut things.
Russ Vogt, the OMB director, has been dreaming about this moment, preparing this moment since puberty.
Russ Vogt, who has posted on X just a short time ago, the rifts have begun.
Yes, they have, and that's just part of a much broader agenda. By the way, you saw Mike Lee there. We're going to come back to him here in just a moment. So it's almost been an hour, and already, I've only gotten to 1 point, but I'm gonna plod on. These next 2 points will go a little bit faster, I think, maybe. But I'm not going to rush. Folks, this is a pivotal time. You need to take the blinders off and the scales off and see what's happening. So I hope you can connect the dots with my first point here between Christian nationalism, TPUSA, Curtis Yarvin, Charlie Kirk, and Project 2025. You see they're all platforming each other. They're all pushing this agenda. Charlie Kirk called Curtis Yarvin a brilliant man who has some great ideas. It's really not hard to connect these dots. But there's a second reason that should sicken Christians, about TPUSA, and this one is even more critical. Secondly, not only has TPUSA been advancing Christian nationalism, but they are platforming and normalizing the LGBTQ plus agenda. Now, already I can hear the screams out there in the internet land, because you've been played over and over again the cherry-picked quotes about Charlie Kirk talking about my personal opinions of I'm a Bible-believing Christian and I think marriage is between one man and one woman. Well, great. That's wonderful. I'm glad that's your personal opinion. Then why are you platforming and normalizing the LGBTQ plus agenda? Everywhere you turn, you see this. All right, so let me just go through some of these. Let's start with Dave Rubin, whom I mentioned earlier. He is an absolute out and avowed homosexual. He has shared the platform at TPUS events multiple times. He's been in multiple sit-down interviews with Charlie Kirk. He told a TPUSA crowd, quote, I'm gay married, and you people don't care about that, do you? Well, they didn't. They cheered in that instance, and many others, by the way. And here's Kirk talking with David Rubin. Watch this. It's about a little over 2 minutes. Kirk says, it's cool to be gay. Gay marriage is great. You should be able to adopt children because it's all about freedom. That's what Kirk thought. Watch this.
No, I know. I said, listen, I never thought I guess questions, but you immediately sat down. You're like, anything. Let's go. All right.
Seriously, challenge me.
Here we are. So, well, I don't think this one will be too much of a challenge, but I think it's an interesting, It just shows how things have shifted. So at the Republican convention, Peter Thiel, an openly gay man, spoke before Trump. He said, I'm a proud gay man, got a standing ovation. Then Trump gets up there, talks about...
And points him out.
Yeah. Right, points him out.
And he said, it makes me very happy, was the exact quote he said.
Because he has a little
makes
bit
me
of a,
very
little
happy.
Gay, that thing with the hand, but okay. But that the fact that there's been such a wholesale shift in that even right now, Ted Cruz or the guys that you might consider a little more of the Christian conservatives,
which I'm one of them,
Mike Huckabee, right? Okay, so where you come from, basically, as far as I can tell, don't really see this as an issue anymore. Is that a fair premise?
I think that's correct. And so let me dive deeper and also pose a hypothetical to some of the leftists watching this. Peter Thiel, openly gay man, gets a standing ovation at the Republican National Convention and then pointed out by the candidate. Do you think that an evangelical pastor that was pro-Israel, that might be a Democrat, would have even been allowed to speak at the Democratic National Convention or given a standing ovation?
I mean, I just have to interrupt. So what? With all respect, Charlie, so what? That the Democrats wouldn't do it, but we are, big enough to do it, to platform one of the top leading LGBTQ figures, Peter Thiel, right in prime time, right before President Trump accepted the nomination at the RNC, when families are raising their kids at home and saying, hey, this is the democratic process in full view, and we want to watch this prime time, time when Trump accepts his party's nomination. And here's Peter Thiel up there talking about how wonderful it is to be gay. I mean, I'm sorry. We're going to have a lot more to say about that. Let me just continue the quote.
They booed God when it was mentioned. Okay,
no, they literally did.
What is the shift here? The shift is the Republican Party is beginning to realize, hey, we're the party of freedom. Like, it's cool if you want to do that. And I think it's a real sea change, because even if you see Rand Paul beginning to endorse more of those favorable drug policy positions on the side of freedom or gay marriage, you're starting to see a sea change where it's becoming the soul searching the Republican Party has been doing the last 30 years is, what's the one thing that ties our party together? Freedom, freedom, freedom. And I think that's why you're starting to see that. And the left, they can't reconcile. What ties them together? Oppression. Like it's the oppression Olympics. It's like who suffers more, And I think that's a really good thing. Segue to one final point is, what I think is the position that needs to be articulated better is, I have no problem if, gay marriage, whatever, like I believe marriage, one man, one woman, that's my own personal position, right? But I'm never going to tell government to have someone live a life. I think it's cool you're married, I think it's great, and you should have all the same tax benefits, adopt children, it's great, right? But
I feel the same way about you.
Well, it's fine, it's like whatever.
Wow. I mean, this is not the soundbites you're hearing in this, sort of installation of Charlie Kirk as this deified saint and martyr. But he says it's all about freedom. This is going to be a recurring theme that you're going to see as we play some more clips here. What they don't understand is that there is a moral component to life, in this world. And what if someone chose to murder behind closed doors in the privacy of their own bedroom? Hey, we're not going to go into their bedroom and tell them what to do. There's a moral component to homosexuality. And there's also a biological component. I mean, why would we want to elevate someone like Peter Thiel to one of the top most influential advisory positions and financiers of our country if he's not even smart enough to figure out how human biology works? I just don't understand this. And what you're going to see, and give me the chance to make this case with the rest of this podcast, is that Charlie Kirk was about getting out votes and getting the Republican Party in place. He wasn't about taking a stand for Christian principles, because nobody, if they were truly a biblical, standing for biblical principles, would say, I think it's cool that you're gay married. I hope you can adopt children. Good job. Great job. This is wonderful. It's all about freedom. Nobody would say that. Nobody would say that. By the way, here's the quote that he gave that both of them referred to about Peter Thiel at the RNC convention in 2016. He said, of course, every American has a unique identity. I'm proud to be gay. I am proud to be Republican. But most of all, I'm proud to be an American. And as they said, that was greeted with a standing ovation. At some point, I began to feel like Ronald Reagan did in the 70s when he said, I didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me. Well, look, the Republican Party no longer represents what I believe as a conservative, Bible-believing Christians. I don't believe in murdering unborn children for any reason. They say you can't murder them in certain cases, but it's okay to murder them in some cases. I think that's an abomination. I don't believe in promoting gay marriage. I don't believe in separating the land of Israel. This is not who I am. And I would hope that Christians would have the discernment to recognize it's not who they are either. So here's another one. Here's Trump platforming Rob Smith, another key, outspoken, openly gay man who shared the stage at TPUSA many times. Watch this clip of this gentleman trying to rationally and calmly ask Kirk some pretty legitimate questions that I would love to hear the answer to. And if I'd have been there, I would have asked the same questions. Watch this.
My question is largely directed to Mr. Kirk because you were raised as a conservative. Part of the issue I see here is, what's your name, Rob? Yeah. So you're saying, you're behind the times, this isn't conservative. Well, we don't want centrists in the conservative movement. We want to retain our core values.
Yeah,
Amen.
But here's the thing. It's not about what you want, because here's the thing. The beauty about social...
By the way, if you don't know who this is, Rob Smith, totally openly out gay guy, platformed, really, discovered, if you will, by Charlie Kirk, thrust into wide popularity, and that's who's talking right now.
Media, the beauty about social media is that I can be me and I can bring myself to the table. And it's not about what you want, it's about what the people want. And if there are enough people in this movement that say, hey, Rob is cool, he's gay, whatever, it really doesn't matter what you think. You can say whatever you want, and you can believe whatever you want to believe. But it's not going to stop me from doing what I'm doing. And it's not going to deplatform me.
So my question is, again, it's directed to Mr. Kirk because he was raised as a conservative. As the guy before has said, you've advocated for homosexuality, said that there's a place for the gay agenda within the conservative movement. My question is, and you're also comfortable with transgenders and cross-dressers, I understand. So my question is there any point where conservatives should take a moral stance on Christian morality, or should we abandon it altogether? So in other words, what is what is your brand of conservatism doing to actually conserve Christian morality? If we're ceding to the left.
I mean, that's a great question, which Kirk never answers, but you can see the crowd, because Christians, when they hear the truth, they do have a visceral response. Unfortunately, as we're going to see in this and other videos, Kirk has a way of ginning up the crowd with these little sound bites and these little one-liners, and most Christians are just like the Stepford Wives in the audience. They just clap no matter when they think they're prompted to clap. But let's finish this out.
On transgender, gay rights, gay marriage, we don't want that in conservatism.
So you don't want him in the conservative movement? I just want to be very clear. Let's just be...
So you don't...
No, we don't want him. That doesn't mean we don't love him. I'll sit down and have coffee with him. I'll talk with him. I'll invite him to my house. We can talk, be friendly, be gracious. But no, I don't want him standing on the platform of a pseudo-Christian organization targeting young people and suggesting, whether directly or indirectly, and it's pretty direct, that it's okay to have same-sex marriage and to sleep with same-sex people and that type of thing. No, I don't want that. Nothing against him. It's that the Conservative Party is supposed to be conserving, among other things, morality.
You don't want me in the movement.
No. Hold on a sec. I want to be very clear. Hold on a sec. You're bringing some very charged language. I'm going to try to calm down the temperature in the room so I can try to rationally understand an irrational position.
Why should we
Let me finish. Let me finish. So, I'm a Christian. I believe the Bible is the greatest book ever to exist in the history of the world. And I believe Rob Smith has decency and dignity as an individual in the United States of America. Hold on a second. We're not...
So, I mean, again, he gives lip service to the Bible. It's like, I believe the Bible is the greatest book. Now watch me ignore it. I just don't understand how this fooled so many people. Whoops.
A gay Christian, and this is the problem that I have, because my relationship with God and coming back into the church over the past year and a half is one of the greatest gifts that has been given to me in terms of being in this movement.
Coming back to the apostate church, yeah.
So my question...
And notice how Kirk claps there. Now, again, I don't want to be too hard on the guy, but why would you clap for someone who's claiming that the church has embraced homosexuality? I don't understand that.
And my question to everybody who tries to say that, oh, you shouldn't be, Christian because you're gay, why are you trying to turn people away from God? So if you love God and Christianity is so right, because I do love God, so why would you?
I'm going to stop it there. With all due respect, Rob, you're the one that's turning people away from God. God has revealed to us what's right and what's wrong, and you're the one thumbing your nose at it. So after Kirk's death, by the way, Rob Smith, this guy you see on the right there, said, quote, "Charlie was about growing the movement. I am one of the many public figures supported and created by Charlie Kirk." Now, you can tell a lot about what's really going on behind the scenes by paying attention to personal tweets like that and posts. See, the Luciferians can control the events, but it's harder to control every post. So here's another one. Here's Scott Presler. He's speaking at a 2024 TPUSA national gathering. Scott Presler, another out-and-out, very famous, millions of followers, gay, that is speaking up for the Republican Party. At this December 2024 national gathering, Charlie Kirk praised Scott Presler, gave him time to speak, and then the crowd went wild when Scott Presler was introduced. During the 2024 campaign, Scott Presler was sent into liberal gay churches to get congregants to vote for Trump and other Republican candidates. Here's Scott Presler with Donald Trump at a CPAC meeting. So Presler was at the 7-hour Kirk memorial service in Glendale, Arizona that featured a who's who of senior-level American politicians, including, think about this, President Donald Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, the DNI Chief Tulsi Gabbard, and Donald Trump Jr., I'm not sure what position he holds, and others. But after that memorial, here's what Scott Presler had to say. And it's not the best audio because it's just him out in the open air and the wind noise is there, but I think you'll get the gist of what he's saying. It's just about a minute.
Hey everybody, this is Scott Presler. Just finishing up today at the Charlie Kirk Memorial Service. And to anyone that watched today, the millions of people across America and the globe, if you're inspired, please don't let this service just end by you either going home or you turning off the YouTube or Facebook or X video. I want you to channel all of the emotions that you're feeling, whether it's heartache or whether it's anger, and I'm asking you kindly, please, channel that frustration, channel that anger into positive action, and wherever you are, join your local Republican Party, join your local Turning Point Action, join your local Early Vote Action, but moreover, do something positive. Do something that Charlie Kirk would want you to do. He wouldn't want you to just mourn and to grieve. He would want you registering voters and living free, fighting peacefully for freedom. And if you are not registered to vote, go today. Vote.gov. Register to vote. Register to vote at your current address. And just make sure that you're making a plan because 2026 is coming. And just because we won in 2024, this fight is not over. And I thank all of you for your support. And thank you to every single person that honored Charlie by being here today in Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you.
Honored Charlie for what? To join the RNC and join TPUSA and get out and vote because 2026 is right around the corner. Again, folks, when will Christians wake up and recognize this is not a Christian ministry? I'm going to prove that here with the point number 3 in a moment. If you want to say it's a conservative movement and you believe that conservatism is about embracing gay marriage and abortion and some of these other things that they're now embracing, fine. That's your prerogative. I disagree. But I don't see how any Bible-believing Christian can claim this is a Christian ministry. And if Scott Presler's comments there at the end of the memorial service don't tip their hand as to what TPUSA is really all about, both before and especially after Kirk's assassination, I don't know what does. Here's another one. Kirk platformed open lesbian Jillian Michaels at the TPUSA Student Action Summit in July of 2020. Is this who we want our college students to emulate? I mean, a lot of Christian parents that I talk to, and I know, like our daughter is a senior at Grand Canyon University, at Charlie's home state, and Charlie has been to their campus, and she went and attended. And a lot of these Christian parents think it's great that Charlie's out there speaking to their students, and then we wonder how much, so many Christian kids graduate even from Christian colleges, and they're pro-LGBTQ, they've abandoned the Bible and inerrancy, they've adopted, all kinds of worldly viewpoints. Well, it's because Christianity has been co-opted by this political movement. Here's a photo of Charlie Kirk with Lady MAGA. Lady MAGA's real name is Ryan Hansen, a Mormon. More on Mormonism in a second. He became a drag queen in Salt Lake City, and he's famous for dressing up like Disney princesses. In 2019, he unveiled his Lady MAGA character as he announced his support for Donald Trump, and he said, quote, "I support President Trump, and I believe that together we can make America great again." His words. Now look, I take a lot of pictures at conferences. I get that people are always asking to take a selfie. They come up, but if an avowed, unapologetic, homosexual, transvestite drag queen came up and asked me to take a selfie with him, the answer would be a gracious but easy no. I'll talk with you, I'll pray for you, I'll give you a gospel tract, but I'm not going to stand beside you and smile. I'm not going to pose with you so that you can use me on your platform to advance immorality. Sorry, not me. Right? Here's Glenn Youngkin, another one, the Virginia governor, donated $100,000 to TPUSA after Kirk's death to start chapters in Virginia. He's spoken at a lot of TPUSA events. He signed a bill last year to protect gay marriage in Virginia. Another one, here's Richard Grenell, openly gay, very famous, platformed at TPUSA events again and again. Who is Richard Grenell? Well, he's the first openly gay person to hold a cabinet-level position. He was Trump's DNI, Director of National Intelligence, in 2020, and that made him the first openly gay cabinet-level position in U.S. history. He previously served as the United States Ambassador to Germany from 2018 to 2020. At one point, according to Grenell, President Trump commissioned him to make sure that homosexuality was legalized in every nation on earth. Those who think that Trump is opposed to the LGBTQ agenda are just living in non-reality. The evidence is not even close to ambiguous. It is overwhelming. On December 16, 2022, Richard Grenell was one of hundreds of guests invited to a celebration at Mar-a-Lago where they danced to YMCA and Macho Man. The gala was in the main ballroom of Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago Beachfront Club, and it was a joyous celebration of gay rights and the historic same-sex marriage law that President Joe Biden at the time had signed days earlier. The event was in honor of the LGBTQ movement and brought in all kinds of notables like Carrie Lake from Arizona. Check out the connection between Charlie Kirk and Carrie Lake, by the way. Other pro-LGBTQ plus Republicans. But the main attraction, of course, was Trump, and he received a standing ovation after delivering an enthusiastic and passionate affirmation of gay rights. He said, quote, "We are fighting for the gay community, and we are fighting and fighting hard. With the help of many of the people here tonight in recent years, our movement," that's the key. Trump owns the movement, just like Charlie Kirk owned the movement. What you do in the privacy of your own bedroom, that's fine. I believe one man, one woman. I believe the Bible, but hey, I'm proud of you, and I'm happy for you, and this is all about freedom, and I'll clap for you, and I want to promote your cause, right? Our movement, Trump said, has taken incredible strides. The strides you've made here is incredible. So you can see why Richard Grenell called Trump, quote, "the most pro-gay American president in American history." Well, he ought to know. All right, the connection to Trump. On the evening of Kirk's tragic death, Grenell had to say this. Had this to say. I should say that better. "Charlie Kirk always had my back. Without hesitation, I served on the Turning Point board because Charlie Kirk asked me to." Wow, TPUSA is a Christian ministry? Why do they have an openly gay man serving on their board? I just don't understand. You see, the Republican Party's slowly been moving to the left, and this is by design, of course. I've talked a lot about this in my books, moving the Overton window. It was Reagan who appointed the Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy, who cast the deciding vote in 2015, legalizing gay marriage. John Roberts, another Republican, appointed justice. George W. Bush appointed John Roberts. He originally dissented in 2015, that's true, but he's since voted several times in support of the recognition of gay marriage and against the discrimination of same-sex couples. And that's all by design. Now, we're about to get close to the end. I'm on my second point here. My second problem with TPUSA is that they platform and support the whole normalizing of the LGBTQ agenda. But I do want to take time to play this clip, another from one of Charlie's thousands of events that he did on college campuses. This one is very typical, and I'll stop as I did before along the way and provide a little bit of commentary. But watch this young man. It deeply saddens me to see this young Christian man. His parents ought to be proud. He's trying to take a stand for God's word and what the Bible says. And Charlie just, dismisses him and almost arrogantly, turns on him and never really even addresses the issue. Watch this.
I got a question for you real quick. Up until about 5 years ago when gay marriage was legalized nationwide, the conservative movement has been explicitly pro-traditional family. Now, both you and your organization advocate for the acceptance of anti-Christian, immoral lifestyles like homosexuality and transsexuality, going as far to invite drag queens like Lady MAGA to your events. It seems to me and anyone who's paying attention that conservatives just believe whatever liberals believed 5 years ago. Right now, there's a push by the left to normalize pedophilia by way of child drag queen shows and... Oh, excuse me. Don't shut off.
Go back to your notes. That's probably where you saved it. You gotta push double tap and then go over.
Right now, there is a push by the left to normalize pedophilia by way of child drag queen shows and rebranding pedophiles as minor attracted persons. 5 years from now, will you be promoting child drag queen shows? Will child abuse become part of the conservative platform?
Boy,
Now, that's a very legitimate question. And you heard a lot of the conservative Christians in the crowd, clap, as they should. Now watch how Kirk handles it.
Slippery slope fallacy if I've ever seen one. First of all, I've never invited a drag queen to come to any Turning Point USA event. I was at Politicon, and an individual by the name of Lady MAGA came up, and I took a picture, and she walked away.
Yeah, again, I've already addressed that. You've seen the picture. But he's missing the point. First of all, it's not a slippery slope argument. It's slippery, historic slipperiness. I mean, he's, as a young man pointed out, this has not always been the view of the Republican Party. They've been pro-family, pro-traditional family values, and that's no longer the case. So it's a fair question. But secondly, you may not have had a drag queen on your platform, although I wouldn't be surprised if you had. But you've had plenty of out-and-out avowed homosexuals on your platform, applauded them, lauded them, praised them. It's a difference without a distinction. But let's let Charlie finish.
Secondly, let me ask you a question. Are you a Trump supporter?
Yes, sir.
So are you a proud Trump supporter?
Of course.
So are you sickened that he had a gay man speak at his convention?
Yes.
Then you're not a Trump supporter, my friend.
I mean, good grief. Folks, I hope you're getting the point here. This young man, of course, still trapped in the right-left paradigm, thinks he only has one option. He's just disappointed with the way the Republican Party has drifted. But yeah, I'm going to support Trump, he says. And then, were you sickened that they had Peter Thiel speak at the convention? He goes, yeah, it did sicken me. And it sickened me too. And it ought to sicken all Christians, by the way. And then Kirk gets very almost emotionally angry and says, well, then you're not a Trump supporter. In other words, you can't claim to be a Republican unless you embrace the LGBTQ agenda.
Thank you very much.
And he's a good speaker, so he gets the crowd ginned up. He rises with a crescendo, and then everybody claps, although you hear some boos.
Let me ask you another question. Should he return the money of Peter Thiel, an openly gay man who supports his campaign?
No, if it helps him strategically.
Okay.
Sure.
I mean, another great answer by this kid. This kid is brilliant. If anybody has a connection to him or knows how to reach it, this is 4 or 5 years ago, so who knows where he is now. But I would love to interview this guy. I don't know where he stands on all of his doctrine, but man, he's spot on. Yeah, he should, return. No, he shouldn't return the money. I'll take the devil's money and use it to advance a positive cause. That's not the point, Charlie. That's not the point.
Should he stop talking to Tammy Bruce, who's an open lesbian that's a Fox News contributor?
If it's affecting his ideas, then probably, yeah.
Absolutely. Amen, young man. Why would you seek counsel from someone who doesn't even understand human biology?
Okay, so you say you're a Trump supporter, yet you have all these issues and these disagreements with him. Let me be very clear about my position. My personal position. I'm a Christian first and foremost, then an American, then a constitutionalist, then a conservative, in that order. I believe marriage, biblically, if we want to have a biblical and theological discussion, as articulated in the greatest book ever to exist in the history of the world, the Holy Bible.
He does that again and again, getting applause lines that way. And these are the cherry-picked quotes that you hear. That's why most people think, that Charlie Kirk was, against homosexuality. Well, he may be personally, we take him at his word on that, but clearly his actions speak otherwise. He platformed and advanced the LGBTQ agenda.
Marriage in the Holy Bible is one man, one woman. I also do not believe in the sort of rhetoric that some people engage in, that all of a sudden that they say there's no place for gay people in the conservative movement. I do not believe that. And
again, he's missing the point here, with all due respect. And by the way, I've listened to a lot of Charlie Kirk stuff, even before his tragic assassination, which is sickening. But in the research for my book, I mean, he has this MO, and contrary to the popular opinion where he's some brilliant, arguer, debater, he's not. He uses a lot of logical fallacies here, and nobody's suggesting that someone who identifies as gay can't vote Republican. That's a private issue. You can vote for whoever you want to, right? We're not telling you how to vote or who to vote to. We'll tell you who we think is the best candidate, but that's up to you. There's a difference between letting them vote and promoting them to key positions of influence in this country where they're shaping and molding the future of America. That's different. That's different, right? And that's what this young man gets that Charlie Kirk doesn't.
let me ask you a question. Can I ask you a question then?
Sure, go for it.
So, the American family, liberty, freedom, the Constitution.
He's not conserving the American family, liberty, and freedom. He's not. He's certainly not conserving our freedom when he platforms, all of these people that we've talked about, Scott Presler, and many others, Scott Presler, Dave Rubin, all of these guys. Let me see if we can finish this here.
Our history, veterans, that's what we're conserving. I'll get to you later, though, don't worry. So let me ask you a question. What if you had your way, what would you do with gay people in America?
What would I do with them?
Because they're not allowed in the conservative movement, so would you just kick them out anytime they show up at a Republican Party? If you were in charge, like what would you say? You can't be part of the Republican Party.
If somebody is advocating for being openly homosexual, they should not be part of the conservative movement.
Couldn't agree more, because that's not conservative. It's certainly not biblical. And again, what we're seeing here is the elevation of the right-left paradigm above the right-wrong paradigm. And we've redefined what conservative is when all of our definitions need to be biblically based. All right, I'm going to have to move on. So not only should Kirk's connection to Christian nationalism and his support for the homosexual community disturb you, but there's one more, and I'll close with this. Promoting ecumenicism. What do we mean by that? Embracing different doctrinal viewpoints from a variety of different perspectives. And this is very much a problem with TPUSA, and it's gotten worse since Kirk's untimely death. Here's Charlie Kirk. TPUSA Faith believes that if believers don't speak out into the most difficult cultural, moral, and spiritual debates of our time, then those who want our destruction and to harm the Christian church, and notice how he defines the Christian church, of all faith traditions, from Catholic to evangelical to mainline. Look, those are the voices that will fill the vacuum. Did Kirk really not understand the huge differences in doctrine between Catholics, evangelicals, and mainline Protestants? I mean, it's apples and oranges. And yet that's the ecumenical viewpoint of Charlie Kirk and TPUSA. But worse than that, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Mormonism, plays a key role in TPUSA. A key role, which raises some red flags for me about how the whole tragic assassination went down in Mormon country. But again, I'm not going to get into all of that. But before I give you some evidence of the connection between Mormonism and TPUSA, let's see why this is such a big problem. Here's a 3.5 minute sort of primer, if you will, on what's wrong with Mormonism.
Mormon religion, Mormonism, whose followers are known as Mormons and Latter-day Saints, was founded less than 200 years ago by a man named Joseph Smith. He claimed to have received a personal visit from God the Father and Jesus Christ, who told him that all churches and their creeds were an abomination. Joseph Smith then set out to restore true Christianity and claims his church to be the only true church on earth. The problem with Mormonism is that it contradicts, modifies, and expands on the Bible. Mormons believe that there are, in fact, 4 sources of divinely inspired words. The Bible, as far as it is translated correctly, the Book of Mormon, which was translated by Smith and published in 1830, Doctrine and Covenants, containing a collection of modern revelations, and the Pearl of Great Price, which is considered by Mormons to clarify doctrines and teachings that were lost from the Bible. Mormons believe the following about God. He has not always been the supreme being of the universe, but attained that status through righteous living and persistent effort. They believe God the Father has a body of flesh and bones as tangible as man's. Brigham Young taught that Adam was actually God and the father of Jesus Christ, although this teaching has been abandoned by modern Mormon leaders. In contrast, Christians know this about God. There is only one true God. He always has existed and always will exist. He was not created, but is the creator. He is perfect, and no one else is equal to him. God the Father is not a man, nor was he ever. He is spirit, and spirit is not made of flesh and bone. Mormons believe that there are different levels or kingdoms in the afterlife: the celestial kingdom, the terrestrial kingdom, the telestial kingdom, and outer darkness. Where mankind will end up depends on what they believe and do in this life. In contrast, the Bible tells us that after death we go to heaven or hell based on whether or not we had faith in Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior. As believers, after death we are with the Lord, but unbelievers are sent to hell. When Jesus comes the second time, we will receive resurrected and glorified bodies. There will be a new heaven and a new earth for believers, and unbelievers will be thrown into an everlasting lake of fire. There is no second chance for redemption after death. Mormon leaders have taught that Jesus' incarnation was the result of a physical relationship between God the Father and Mary. Mormons believe Jesus is a God, but that any human can also become a God. Mormonism teaches that salvation can be earned by a combination of faith and good works. Contrary to this, Christians historically have taught that no one can achieve the status of God. Only He is holy. We can be made holy in God's sight through faith in Him. Jesus is the only begotten Son of God and is the only one ever to have lived a sinless life. Jesus and God are one in essence, Jesus being the only man who existed before physical birth. Jesus tells us it is impossible to get to heaven by our own works, and that only by faith in Him is it possible. Clearly, there is only one way to receive salvation, and that is to know God and His Son Jesus. Receiving salvation is not done by works, but by faith. We can receive this gift no matter who we are or what we have done. Salvation is found in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven given to men by which we must be saved. Although Mormons are usually friendly, loving, and kind people, they are deceived by a false religion that distorts the nature of God, the person of Jesus Christ, and the means of salvation.
So that kind of gives you just a quick primer on the problems with Mormonism. There's much more that we could say, but now let's make the connection. Here's Utah GOP Chair Robert Axson, a Latter-day Saint or Mormon, who spoke at a memorial service honoring Kirk and quoted the LDS scriptures. This was the same day of the big one in Arizona. In Utah, they held a big I don't want to say watch party, or watch gathering is probably a more appropriate way to describe it. And they had a pre-show there, and he spoke, and again, quoting the LDS scriptures. And, after Kirk's death, influential Utah Republicans who are Mormons were announced to fill speaking slots on the America Comeback Tour, TPUSA's 2025 tour. Senator Mike Lee, whom I mentioned, and by the way, he's spoken many times at TPUSA events. Governor Spencer Cox, another Mormon from Utah, and most notably, Tyler Boyer, a Latter-day Saint, a Mormon. He is the COO of Turning Point Action, the political branch of TPUSA. Now look, if a private company or organization wants to hire Mormons or feature Mormons as the face of their company on platforms, that's perfectly fine. It's a free country. But what you cannot do is claim to be a Bible-believing Christian ministry while simultaneously promoting anti-biblical religions like Mormonism. TPUSA needs to own who it is and what it is. It's a political action committee seeking to draw young people, gays, lesbians, and anyone who will vote into the Republican Party regardless of their moral views. Those who claim TPUSA is a, quote, Christian ministry or Christian organization that is bringing revival to the land, you need to explain to me how you can have a Mormon in charge of a major branch of this ministry and still be considered Christian. So interestingly, I went to the TPUSA website just this week, and this is what it says about their aim. Quote, our aim is to bring together Christians from all walks of life, both online and physical gatherings, united to, quote, defend biblical principles. Really? Defend biblical principles by platforming openly gay and transgender people? Really? Defend biblical principles by hiring a Mormon as your COO? By having Mormons speak and keynote at your events? Really? Defend biblical principles by teaching that the church should overthrow the government and we need a monarchy? I'm sorry, but these are three very clear reasons why I am not happy with TPUSA, and I don't think Christians should jump on the bandwagon unless they repent and make a change in their overall approach. They are advancing Christian nationalism, they're platforming and normalizing the LGBTQ agenda, and they're promoting ecumenicism, all religions leading one direction, which will certainly is exactly what the future Antichrist is going to try to do in the beast system. Now, if you support these three views, then you should support TPUSA. I don't. I'll close with these quotes. Sinclair Lewis, that mid-20th century American novelist and playwright, said, when fascism comes to America, it will be wrapped in the flag and carrying the cross. Folks, this is what is happening by design. I've made the case in much more concretely in my books and in my most recent book, but hopefully you're beginning to connect the dots yourself. And speaking of fascism, Erwin Lutzer said this when reflecting on the rise of the Third Reich, very poignant. Quote, perhaps the most enduring lesson of that period of history is that through the power of compelling propaganda and intimidation, ordinary people can become part of an evil movement and be willingly caught up with the euphoria that surrounds a mesmerizing leader. Well, again, if you're interested, the book, Chapter 9, is where I deal with a lot of what we talked about today. But it's The Great Last Days Apostasy.org, thegreatlastdaysapostasy.org. But that's what I think. Again, I think we should be sickened by what happened to Charlie Kirk, killed in cold blood. That should not happen to anybody. But we should also be sickened by TPUSA's promotion of the LGBTQ agenda, their promotion of Christian nationalism and dominionism, and their embracing ecumenicism, all claiming that it's part of their biblical mandate. All right, well, let the emails fly. I hope you know my heart. Look, I love you all. Even if you disagree with me on this, I respect that. This is kind of like when I said why I couldn't support Trump, and so people just didn't get it. Look, you have the right to support whatever organizations you want. So do I. Hopefully you'll give me that freedom, but I hope you'll take seriously the facts that I've presented in today's podcast. Don't forget to join us tonight. We got Joe Hawkins in the hot seat for our premier live 90-minute Zoom Q&A. It's not too late to become a premier subscriber. You can sign up online at notbyworks.org. Join us again next Thursday as we have another episode of My Thoughts. And until then, God bless you, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.
This has been the NBW Ministries podcast with Dr. J.B. Hickson. You can learn more about NBW by visiting notbyworks.org or through the free NBW Ministries app available in the App Store or Google Play Store. Thanks again for listening, and remember, it's not by works of righteousness we have done, but according to His mercy, He saved us. Titus 3, verse 5.